Okay, so pause for a minute, take a look at it, and you might see that, hey, wait a minute. As far as analogies are concerned, I'm not sure that this one actually does the trick. Because, look, on Copernicus's picture, it seemed to be, right here, Earth was in the center, and of course, human beings were on Earth, the crown of creation. Let's give ourselves a little crown here. And then Copernicus comes along, ditches the old paradigm, boots Earth into orbit around the sun, and off our crown falls. Oops, we're no longer that important. Now, if that was the shift in Copernicus's case, isn't that kind of actually dissimilar from the shift in Kant's case? Because Kant, after all, it used to be that our intuition and our cognition was out there on the outskirts, a satellite around the star of the object. And what Kant does, he puts our cognition, our intuition, us, in the center. So Copernicus boots us out, Kant puts us in. That's a disanalogy. How on earth are these supposed to, is the Copernican move supposed to illustrate what Kant is doing? And that disanalogy between Copernicus and Kant's revolution has prompted a prominent Kant scholar to say, fairly recently in 2006, quote, "The analogy seems to be only that in philosophy, as in astronomy, progress sometimes requires a radical reversal of traditional assumptions." So it seems they're actually disanalogies. The only analogy seems to be that we're going from an old paradigm to a new paradigm. Same with Kant. But beyond that, there doesn't seem to be all that much similarity. I would say that looking more carefully at what the explanans and the explanandum is internally, namely what it is that this geocentric picture tried to explain and what it is that the heliocentric picture is trying to explain, we can see that there actually is a much deeper and richer analogy and similarity between Copernicus's case and Kant's case, and it's that richer, deeper analogy that brings out why Kant thinks Copernicus can help him illustrate what he's doing in philosophy. Okay, so what is it? Turns out the thing. So that's where it's important that we've discussed both explanation and analogy in the previous video, because you see the Copernican analogy has its explanans, that's everything that's right here on the left side of the board, and its explanandum, the thing to be explained, the thing we don't understand very well, that's everything on the right side of the board. But there's, within each of these squares, you have an explanans and an explanandum. Now, the explanans, the explanandum is the same on the Copernican side, both in the old paradigm and the new paradigm. It's the thing we don't understand, the thing we want to explain. What's the thing we don't understand in astronomy? It's celestial motion. So we have the explanandum is the observed motion of the heavenly bodies, motion in the stars. And that's explained in terms of, here comes the explanans. On the geocentric paradigm, the explanans, the thing explaining observed motion, was actual motion. All right. Geocentrism explained the observed motion of heavenly bodies in terms of the actual motion. So, why does it look like the sun moves across the sky during the course of a day? Well, that's because the sun moves, right? The sun moves around me. Copernicus says he has the same thing, the same set of observations to explain the observed motion of the heavenly bodies. But Copernicus says his explanans is the sun, the observed motion, the sun appears to be moving not because it is moving, but because we're moving. And in terms of motion of the observer. All right. Now, flip over to Kant. What's the explanandum in metaphysics? Well, the explanandum in metaphysics is something like this: the observed properties of objects. All right, so on the old paradigm, on the rationalist, both the rationalist and the empiricist paradigm, this thing, the observed properties of the objects, were explained, explanans, in terms of actual properties of objects, right? The objects are the way they appear. But on that assumption, it was impossible to explain certain features, namely the a priori stuff, namely cause, space, time, substance, that stuff we couldn't explain on the assumption that the cause is actually in the object, or space is, the objects are somehow spatial. That, on that assumption, we couldn't make progress. So Kant, just like Copernicus, that's the point of the analogy, says he gives us a different explanans. And that explanans is the observed properties of the objects are explained properties of the observer, and more specifically of the observer's cognitive faculties. And that's the similarity between Copernicus's procedure and Kant's. Copernicus finds the explanation in features of the observer, as does Kant.